Hello and welcome to another edition of For the Record. I'm Sean Murphy. My guest today is Greg Stroud. He is the executive director of Seacoast. It's his first time on the show. First of all, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on.
For those who aren't familiar with what Seacoast is, tell us.
Seacoast is an independent special project of the Connecticut Trust for Historic Preservation. So we're kind of, you could say, we're the boots on the ground in southeastern Connecticut, working on preservation issues.
And the big issue that we are here to talk about today is
high-speed rail in southeastern Connecticut.
And the possibility that southeastern Connecticut could be bypassed for a plan which would would basically just create a new path up sort of central Connecticut, right?
Well, no, actually, what we're worried about is that the bypass, that they call it the Kenyon to Old Saybrook bypass. Mm-hmm. And so this bypass would bypass the coast, but it would cross the Connecticut River, go right through the historic district in Old Lyme, and then sort of along 95 and sort of hitting each of the historic towns in southeastern Connecticut. So it would bypass the existing rail, but it would very much
still kind of.
It would very much hit every town coming along.
Now, so let's get their point of view first, since they're not here. Their goal is to speed up the rail process, right?
To gain 25 minutes. To be fair, there are some nasty curves, and there are 5-century-old lift bridges. I mean, they have reasons that they want to modernize the corridor. Certainly.
No, but part of your argument is you could modernize the existing routes and still keep the existing route without having to bypass it, right?
We believe that there are more affordable and better options for modernizing the corridor, and that the bypass is pretty much, for southeastern Connecticut in particular, it's kind of all impact and not much benefit.
Very true. Before we get into that, I just want to talk about your background, because as executive director for Seacoast, you are basically just a resident of a shoreline town, right? And this kind of, you and some of your people were just kind of like hit by this one day where you found out this plan was being put into place, right?
So my background, I actually am an academic. I have a PhD in history with a specialty in preservation.
Should I be calling you doctor?
Please, no.
Okay.
Call me Greg.
Okay.
And, but I was not working on this issue initially. I actually discovered it through a Google alert, of all things.
Is that right? Technology,
Technology came up and it said, there's the plan. And I'd been following it from a distance, like I think a lot of people. High-speed rail, I'm for it.
Right.
And then I started digging into the plan, and I became concerned. And I started reaching out to local government and local organizations, and I realized that there was still a level of disconnect between the sort of reality of the impact and the need to engage right away, and what people thought. It's a big process, and it's confusing.
Did the people in general not do a good enough job in sort of getting the word out to people about what this will actually encompass? Because it seems like it was like kind of under the rug.
It's a huge process. I guess I'll let you be a judge. I'll tell you how important the plan is, and you tell me if you think people know enough about it. This plan replaces a blueprint that dates back to 1978.
Oh, my goodness.
And it will last. It has a horizon of 2040. So this is a once-in-a-generation plan to modernize high-speed rail and the Northeast Corridor from Washington, D.C. to Boston. And the #1 impacted county between Boston and Washington is New London County. The #2 impacted county is Washington County, Rhode Island. The #1 impacted town between Washington and Boston is Old Lyme. And so I think, how many people know that?
Yeah.
How many people in the audience know that? If you don't know that, you should be asking why.
And when that Old Lyme came up and New London came up, all of a sudden a red flag came up for you, right?
Yes. When they first started the planning process in 2012, this bypass that really concerns us, it actually wasn't among the initial 98 alternatives. So they start out with 98 plans.
How many different ways can you have an alternative plan? Is there that much land to do that?
Well, it's because it's the entire Northeast corridor.
Okay.
So some of these plans affected different areas in different ways.
By the way, we should mention that the Northeast corridor is probably one of the most profitable and most used sections of train rail that exists in the United States, right?
It's important,
Yeah.
and in many ways it's successful. It has real challenges now in that the infrastructure is falling apart on the existing corridor. I'm a train person. I love to go on the train. But yes, the Northeast corridor, when they look at it as a huge motor for the economy in the Northeast. And they want to modernize it.
Big cities that are close together, high populations.
They actually, when they look at this, they look at it as not as big cities, but as a giant megalopolis, a huge city, one big city.
That's connected by this rail system,
That's
right?
connected by this rail system. And so this plan is of that scope and size. So part of the reason people didn't understand it is because it's just so big. You know, it's 1,000 pages with footnotes and appendices.
Who reads through all that stuff?
Who reads it all?
Yeah.
Luckily, these days, it's searchable.
So you realized pretty quickly that places like Old Lyme, where you're from, and New London, which is in Connecticut, in the southeastern section of Connecticut, it's sort of like the major hub, right? It's got a port, train, bus, transportation center, big tourist area, especially if you go out to Mystic and all the way to Westerly, Rhode Island, even, right?
These are railroad communities. They've been shaped by rail for 100 years. They're pro-rail communities, I think. A lot of desire for commuter service. And so initially, I think a lot of people come at this and say, oh, modernize the corridor, this is a good thing. But then we dig in and we try to figure out, well, will this improve service? Will this take money away from existing service? Will they fix the bridges that are there, or will they build new infrastructure and let the existing bridges rot? You know, all these questions that people should be asking, and then you think, well, where do I talk to people? Who do I talk to people? And you know, when can I comment?
And that's exactly what I wanted to ask you. When that red flag went up, when you got your Google alert and you looked into a little bit and you learned what was going on here, you had to have thought at some point, it can't be just me that's concerned about this. There's got to be other people that have the same issue, that take issue with this as I do. Mm-hmm. So then what is your next step? How do you reach out to find other people like-minded?
So when we first got involved in this, apparently a lot of people were under the impression that you could wait for something that they call Tier 2. And so here's the gist of it. When we found out, they were just completing public comment. So the time when we can give our opinion to the government's listening, and that finished on February 16th.
Without anybody really knowing about it, right?
Most people didn't know about it. In fact, that was extended 2 weeks. The initial public comment in Old Lyme, in January, I think there might have been 6 or 8 comments. And then we spread the alarm, and suddenly we got more comments from Old Lyme in southeastern Connecticut than from Manhattan.
Wow.
Or from Baltimore. Nearly half of the comments come from just Old Lyme.
Because they realized that this was impacting them in their communities, right?
Yeah, and they wanted to spread the word. And here's the thing. If you wait until Tier 2, the routes, the map, has already been decided. So what they're doing right now is, sure, it's early in the planning. This is a big, long plan that's going to take decades. But all the maps will be decided maybe within the next week. In fact, they are already decided, but they'll have to announce them.
Right.
And once those maps are drawn out,
there's no going back?
It will be very difficult. There's no desire to go back. These are pretty much maps that will be in place as a blueprint, shaping every transportation decision, every rail decision, every bridge, every wire along the Northeast Corridor until 2040. at the very least.
Wow.
So it's a big plan.
So we can understand their side of the issue a little bit, where they want to improve infrastructure and decaying bridges and track and whatever, and they sometimes need to be able to do a slight reroute in order to be able to have new infrastructure, maybe speed up the rail a little bit. On the other hand, there's a significant economic impact to the areas where the track will suddenly no longer exist.
Once they put this purple line on the map, once this map is drawn, then every business that's near that purple line is affected. Already we see in Old Lyme, and I've talked to businesses in Mystic, that their plans, their financial plans, the banks, the real estate companies are saying, hey, this is hitting us. So this is a plan that lasts till 2040, but it's having effects already now, even before it's drawn on the map.
Effects in, like, for example, property values?
Property values, it starts affecting tax bases, all sorts of things. So I think the one example that might hit home for people is it Route 11?
Route 11, yes.
Route 11.
That's a big mantra of mine, that never got finished, by the way.
Never got finished.
Right.
So, but if you talk to the property owners in the path,
Right.
then it didn't have to be finished for them to they have problems with liens, they had all kinds of issues that it's like, either finish it or don't. And
Route
so
11 connects I-95 to Route 2, which is a direct shot to Hartford. In southeastern Connecticut, unlike all other parts of the state, for the most part, there's no direct highway to get to Hartford
Absolutely.
from southeastern Connecticut.
Uh-huh.
But the thing is, they were so close to finishing. The mountains have already been blown up, and there's already like a road there. It just never got finished.
So we're kind of in that stage where they're sort of planning something like a Route 11, except
Right.
much bigger.
Right.
I mean, much bigger.
Because you're talking about the Northeast Corridor.
Northeast Corridor,
Right.
yeah. And so we're talking a multi-billion-dollar project. It has bipartisan support. I think often we think, oh, I wish government worked better, and I wish government worked better, and I wish government was more bipartisan. Well, there are drawbacks, and one drawback is perhaps the most bipartisan, the most productive and effective committee is in Congress working on this.
Transportation?
Transportation and the rail.
Right.
And there is a consensus, not just about high-speed rail, but about infrastructure, that over the next 20 years, there is going to be a massive influx of infrastructure, and that will affect southeastern Connecticut, that will affect the entire United States. And that's not just high-speed rail, but that's widening I-95, that's putting in more utilities, whether it's wires, cell phone towers, all sorts of things that are planned because, infrastructure is...
It falls down after a while. You need to upgrade it.
It does.
And let's get into that a little bit more. Let's take a break and come back. Why don't you give a website out for people to go and learn more, and then we'll come back and talk about it.
Okay. We are Seacoast, seacoast.org, and that's secoast.org. And you can find us, just type into Facebook. You can find us on Facebook as well. We're very active. Take a look.
Greg Stroud, Executive Director for Seacoast. We've got a lot more to get to, so we'll come right back. I'm Sean Murphy. This is For the Record. Stay right there. Welcome back to For the Record. I'm Sean Murphy. My guest, Greg Stroud, Executive Director of Seacoast, and we've learned a lot so far just in the first segment about a rail bypass, basically looking to slightly bypass southeastern Connecticut, for infrastructure purposes, and there's a lot of opposition to it. It can affect the towns in this area. What I want to ask you is, in all of that, and even more that you have to add, where are we right now? Where do we stand in the process?
Right now, in the process, public comment, the time for people to put in their input, that has finished. That finished at the end of the winter. So sometime we think maybe this week, maybe next, they will announce the plan. And when they announce that plan, that's the blueprint that they plan to keep till 2040. And we have 30 days after they announce that plan to do something. And so this is it's a political time.
It's a pivotal time is what it is.
It's a pivotal time.
Yeah.
And it's a time that we need to dot every I and make sure that we do everything we can to keep really all the towns in southeastern Connecticut from having to go to the courts. Because we look down, we've discussed this and worked on this issue with high-speed rail advocates down in Florida.
That have experience in
They
these
have
areas.
experienced it, and they see just how expensive it can be for towns to fight this. And so we are doing everything in our power to keep this out of the courts, to encourage the FRA to make a better decision.
What's the FRA?
The Federal Railroad Administration.
Okay.
So they're the umbrella organization
Okay.
that's planning this. So they're planning it for Amtrak, but the FRA is the big federal agency, huge federal agency.
Yeah. Oh, is there a lot of bureaucracy involved if we're talking huge federal agency?
It's the biggest. I will say this, that a lot of people know the FRA, and they know the contractor that's doing this. It's a contractor, it's a multinational called Parsons Brinckerhoff. These are the same people that did the Baldwin Bridge. They did electrification to the east, and they also did the Big Dig.
In Boston.
In Boston.
That's not something to brag about, though,
That's
right?
not something they don't bring that up very
That's
often.
not in the literature. It's not in the pamphlet when they want on the resume or what?
Yeah, exactly. It is for the construction company.
You want to talk about bureaucracy? Boston politics, huh? You know.
It's so it's a huge bureaucratic process, and luckily we have every member of our delegation from Blumenthal, Murphy, and Courtney down to Paul Formica, down to for us Devin Carney to the west. I'm not sure the state representative.
So they're all on board, is what you're
They're
saying.
all on board.
So,
Rob Simmons has
right.
been great. We've had great political bipartisan support against this.
Right.
Every single town from Old Saybrook to Westerly, Rhode Island, 2 states, have come out against this. Every single town on the route has committed to opposing this bypass.
How did you get momentum as far as getting people to join the cause? Did you have to basically just kind of tell them what's going on and have them go, "Wow, I did not know that"?
You tell people right. You tell people and you say, "Hey, this is big. Why don't you know? Shouldn't we be engaged? Shouldn't you? Why haven't you heard about this?" And we've used social media. We've used a lot of social media to get people involved.
And that's where you need to be, because that's where the people are. It's not, a website is great, but it's pretty static. The information is there. You either read it or you don't. But on social media, you comment back, you like, you follow, you reply.
So then we learn from you.
Up thumb or a down thumb. Yeah.
And then you send in your messages. And so we have been using Facebook quite a bit. So find us on Facebook. And if you type in Seacoast, you'll find us.
You should have been on. The word should have gotten out earlier when there was more time for that public process to go through, where people could comment and speak their mind.
And we believe it's been a flawed process, and it's been flawed in a lot of ways. And one is in terms of outreach. One is that they started out with these 98 plans back in 2012, and they added the bypass only at the end, only once they had reduced it down to 3 plans. So they had 3 plans, and they said, "Oh yeah, and let's put in the bypass." So they'd gone through all of the sorting and all of the public interaction, and then they put this in at the end, and we think that's a lot of the reason why it hasn't gotten more notice and why it hasn't gotten more opposition, because it was put in at the end. It was put in, I think, to kind of avoid
Public outrage, outcry, or outrage. You mentioned the possibility of trying to avoid, courts and lawyers. Feasibly, realistically, is it possible in the real world?
It is possible in the real world if we have 2 possibilities to avoid much legal help. We already are working with lawyers, national level lawyers. We have to be careful. But to avoid the courts, we have these 30 days. And in those 30 days, if that bypass is in the plan, and we think it will be, we have to work with that delegation to make clear that we are adamantly opposed to this, that we support rail and we believe there are better solutions, but we do not believe they should make a once-in-a-generation decision without the public being involved.
If you put it in people's personal, if it affects their pocketbook, their wallet, where in depending on where this rail system goes, their property taxes change, their property value changes. Doesn't that hit home more for them?
Even speaking with Mayor Passerell, he made the point, New London has 5 square miles. So this bypass is one more slice that they take out of your tax base. The Hodges Square Village, where they've been doing wonderful work there. They just put in the historic district. This will hit them once again. For Old Lyme, this would come at a height of 40 feet through the historic district. If you know the Florence Griswold or the Bee and Thistle, this would come a couple hundred feet for them. Fly over the existing 95 and join. So for our tax base and for our community, it would be disastrous. It would be destructive. For Old Saybrook and the mouth of the Connecticut River, all those marinas, one more impact, and that's one of the few rivers, river mouths in the entire northeastern hemisphere that is not industrialized. So we're talking about a massive environmental impact as well.
How about since you brought that up, the preservation organizations in Connecticut and Rhode Island, have they been involved in the process, or?
Every single day for the last 9 months, we have worked hand in hand with the Connecticut Trust for Historic Preservation. Now, this is an organization, they have a new executive director, and his name is Daniel McKay. And he looks at his organization and he says, we have to be involved in infrastructure. It's not just old houses, but it's everything around those old houses and affects them. And we have this wave of infrastructure coming in, and his organization says we want to be involved. And not just in Old Lyme or in Stonington, but in East Lyme and New London and Mystic and the whole
everybody
community,
in between.
everyone. And he looks at this and he says, we're a statewide organization, but this is a statewide impact. This is a motor for the economy. This is a tourist motor. This has all those summer houses, all the transportation hub in New London.
Summertime tourism between Westerly all the way into New London and Mystic and down to Old Saybrook, Old Lyme. Right?
And frankly, imagine what a massive construction project built along 95 would do to traffic and everything else in every business and community in southeastern Connecticut. So we're worried about the impacts that are really starting now and could last for decades.
Rhode Island completely on board in the same mindset as you because they're on the route too.
Westerly, Rhode Island in particular, they share, as a community, they share so much with this area. We share the same tourist base. We share many of the same historic and environmental issues. So they've been great, actually.
What do you want to say, final words to the people, what they should know, how they can take action or be more informed?
I think you have to, in this case, you have to let your representatives know, and I think they're receptive. You have to let them know that you care about this, and you care about this now, and that you want to get involved, and you want to tell them, you have to lessen in on the process. You can't make these decisions that will last for my children and grandchildren. You can't make these decisions in private, in back rooms.
Right.
And I think you will find a receptive ear in Blumenthal, Murphy, Courtney, Formica, Carney, Rob Simmons, all these people, if you contact them and tell them now, and not wait for a kinder, gentler bypass.
One more time on the website.
That's Seacoast, that's spelled secoast.org, and check us out on Facebook.
Greg Stroud, Executive Director for Seacoast. We learned a lot today. Thank you for being on the show. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
You can see this show and many others on our YouTube sites. Until next time, I'm Sean Murphy. This is For the Record. Take care.